Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Stuffed Mummy. South of Egypt at the archaeological site of Nag el-Hassai, a very interesting mummy was found in 1916. The burial ground was used between 332 and 30 BC. Following the discovery, the mummified remains were taken to the basement at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, but nobody ever paid much attention to the mummy because it didn't appear that important. It just sat in the corner of a storage room collecting dust. That is, until recently. A team of Egyptian scientists decided on a whim to take CT scans of the mummy. What they discovered blew their minds into a million pieces. The 2,300-year-old mummy is that of a teenager from high society. Dozens of amulets were found stuffed inside the teen's remains. 49 to be exact. He has now been nicknamed the Golden Child because his body was full of treasure. The mummy was placed inside 2 coffins. Think of it kind of like a Russian doll. The outer coffin is beautifully decorated and inscribed with Greek. The inner coffin is made of solid wood. The heart and organs were removed through an incision made in the groin. The brain was taken out through the nose and placed in resin. Then the emptied husk of the youngster was filled with gold. Experts think it had to do with the ancient Egyptian belief of needing to pay to enter the afterlife. Egyptians believed that after a person died, their soul had to go on a journey through the underworld and be judged. By decorating the boy with 49 amulets, weaved within the folds of the casings and inside the body itself, the teen should have entered the afterlife with wealth and power. Each amulet was thought to have magical abilities. One was made in the shape of the Eye of Horus. The boy was given a scarab amulet and the Knot of Isis. Most were made of gold, others of baked clay, and some of precious stone. Sahar Salim from Cairo University said the amulets were meant to give the boy vitality and to protect him from evil as he journeyed to his final destination in the land of the dead. Number 9. A secret in Jesus' bum. In Spain, a team of restorers were recently working on a statue of Jesus Christ from the 18th century. As they were working to clean the statue and restore it to its former glory, they found something hidden in its bum. Yes, a secret treasure was found hiding inside Jesus Christ's wooden butt. The treasure is a message, a note written in 1777. The calligraphy is gorgeous, typical of the age. It was stuffed into the backside of the Christian Messiah by a priest. He likely hadn't realized he was making one of the world's first time capsules. The note is amazing for historians. It contains everything from popular 18th century pastimes to famous people. It even has a few tidbits on the economic situation of the day and the political discourse of the late 1700s. The priest who wrote the document was Joaquin Minguez. Researchers know this because he signed his name on the note. He was a priest of the Cathedral of Burgo de Osma. The wooden statue of Jesus Christ is kept at the Santa Agueda in the village of Sotillo de la Ribera. The note was written on 2 sides of 2 pages. When the restorers removed the fabric covering Jesus' bottom, they found a small gap, and it was from that gap that they pulled the note. Local historian Efrain Arroyo was overwhelmed by the incredible discovery. He said it is very unique to find handwritten documents stashed in a statue. It almost never happens, but it does look like the priest may have intentionally hidden the note to make one of the earliest time capsules ever. He even wrote the name of the sculptor. He wrote down what was happening in the community at the time, and he wrote down the names of common diseases that were ravaging the people. He mentioned children's games that were being played, and the names of famous local bullfighters. The priest really did jot down everything he could think of to give a snapshot into what life was like in his small Spanish town. I wonder who he thought was going to find this and why he did it. He probably couldn't even imagine what life is like now. And now for number 8. But first, it's shoutout time. I want to give a big thank you to Kristen Harrington and RS Don Call for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. Number 8. The Mummified Monk. In the Dutch town of Amersfoort, the Meander Medical Center got a bit of a surprise. The doctors at the center were used to treating senior citizens, but the patient they got in 2014 was 1,000 years old. The patient was obviously not alive. Researchers brought a statue of Buddha to the medical center to have it looked at. The statue was on loan from the Drenz Museum out of China for the first time. Scientists hoped medical technology could reveal the thing hidden inside the life-size statue. Inside the statue was the mummified remains of a Buddhist monk sitting in the lotus position. The monk is actually encased inside the statue. It's believed his name was Liu Chuan and that he attended the Chinese meditation school around 1100 AD. There is no written evidence of what happened to him, but scientists think he mummified himself on purpose. The practice of self-mummification was once common in Japan and some places in China, but it doesn't happen very much anymore. Monks would eat nothing except nuts and tree bark as they slowly got rid of all their fat and body moisture. Anything that might cause their body to decay was purged from them. They would eat herbs and nuts, some sesame seeds. They'd also drink poisonous tree sap as a natural embalming fluid. When the monk was close to death, they would be buried alive in an underground chamber in the lotus position. After 3 years, the chamber would be opened for inspection. If the monk was mummified, they would be taken to a temple and venerated. If they didn't mummify in those 3 years, an exorcism needed to be performed to remove the corruption. Liu Chuan is the only human that researchers know about who mummified himself inside a Buddhist statue, presumably. Even with the medical tests done at the center in the Netherlands, experts don't know what really happened. His organs were removed and replaced with bits of paper. Nobody knows how the organs left his body or how he ended up inside the statue. The whole thing is a huge mystery. Number 7. Artifacts in a Mississippi gator. Ancient stone artifacts were recently found in a very unlikely place. In Mississippi, an alligator was discovered with ancient Native American artifacts in its belly. The gator weighed in at a whopping 750 pounds. Hunter John Hamilton from White Oak took the captured alligator to be processed at a facility in Yazoo City. According to the processing plant, they have been finding a lot of cool stuff in big alligators. This one, 13 feet and 5 inches, produced the biggest shock. One of these stones was identified as a broken arrowhead. The other is something called a plummet, used as a fishing weight by Native Americans. These particular items date back to a time scientists call the Archaic period, which took place between 10,000 and 3,000 years ago. The big question right away was, why did an alligator have ancient artifacts in its stomach? Where could it possibly have gotten such great relics? It would make sense if the alligator had accidentally swallowed one artifact, but 2 feels like an impossible coincidence, like winning the lottery twice in a row. Shane Smith from the processing plant said his first thought was that it ate a Native American. But of course, the alligator hasn't been alive for thousands of years. The artifacts were found with fish bones, feathers, chunks of hair, scraps of wood, and toxic bile that can burn your skin. Some didn't even believe the story when it broke, but experts say it's entirely possible. Alligators are notorious for swallowing all kinds of random things while they're hunting. As they open their jaws and gulp things in their throat, rocks and other objects can get in there too. It must have accidentally swallowed part of a stash of Native American artifacts on the banks of a bayou. The broken arrowhead is the oldest of the 2 artifacts. Expert James Starnes from the Mississippi Office of Geology says it is upwards of 5,000 years old. The fishing plummet is somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 years old. Number 6. The trash mummy. In Peru, archaeology students went dumpster diving. Well, more like ancient trash heap diving. Inside a temple, the students dug through 8 tons of rubbish. What they found hidden was beyond expectations. Stashed underneath a mountain of garbage was a mummified body from the ancient Manchai culture. The Manchai culture was known for their intricate textile work and decorative pottery. They thrived in the central Andes of Peru starting around 1000 BC, cultivating maize and squash. They had a vast trading network with other cultures across Peru. Their culture was complicated, but they were thought to be very neighborly. But then, around 1400 AD, they vanished into obscurity. Their cities and temples became forgotten ruins. The Manchai culture was obsessed with religion. They created ceremonial enclosures at most of their main religious sites. These buildings were known as ushnu. They were constructed in a U shape and used in all kinds of religious rites. Although, to be fair, archaeologists don't know exactly what those ceremonies may have looked like 3,000 years ago. The religious buildings were typically oriented toward the rising sun. They were made with stone or brick. and the Manchai most likely believed that their religious buildings acted as a connection point between the realm of humans and the spirit realm. Before archaeologists from San Marcos University could investigate the temple, they had to remove the trash. As they were busy removing the garbage, one of the members of the team spotted some hair and what looked like the top of a skull. It turned out to be a mummy who may have been sacrificed as an offering. The mummy had been wrapped in cotton vegetable fiber cloths. Then it was placed in a tomb hidden at the center of the Ushnu. This happened sometime between 1000 BC and 200 AD. The individual may have been killed as an offering to the heavens for success in some endeavor, anything from a boon to crops to success in an upcoming battle. It's amazing that underneath all the modern garbage, the mummy stayed relatively intact for so many thousands of years. Number 5. The room within a room. In the English countryside, researchers used new laser scanners to precisely map a historic country house. They wanted to learn more about the construction of a secret priest hole that was discovered in the tower of the gatehouse. The country house is called Cowton Court, a Tudor mansion once home to the Throckmorton family. It's their ancestral seat of power. They have been one of the top influential families of the English Catholic order since the Middle Ages. The oldest parts of the structure have been standing since the 14th century. During the late 16th century in England, Catholic persecution was on the rise. There was a sudden shift in religious doctrine, and suddenly Catholic priests found themselves in trouble. At the Throckmorton family home, a secret hole was made between the floors of the turreted tower. It's called a priest hole because if the religious zealots came to kill Catholic priests, they could hide in the secret chamber. It was Queen Elizabeth I who sent search parties to enforce her anti-Catholic laws. The only way to access the chamber is through a trapdoor in the turret. Cowton Court is no longer in the possession of the Throckmorton family. It's now owned by the English heritage charity National Trust. The room is generally open to the public. Tourists can climb the winding spiral stairs to see the secret hiding place of the old priests. When experts used lasers to scan the property, they illuminated a hiding place within a hiding place. Whoever designed this thing was a genius. Hidden beneath the priest hole is a second priest hole underneath a false floor. If the Queen's priest hunters discovered the original secret room, there was another secret room underneath that one to trick them. They would look inside and see no priest, when in reality the priest would be hidden in the secondary chamber under the first one. It was a truly brilliant design that shows how dangerous it was to be Catholic under Queen Elizabeth I. Have you ever found a secret room or compartment? Let me know in the comments. Number 4. Jars of children. In northern China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, something horrific was discovered. Archaeologists found tombs containing urn burials of 128 children. The tombs were found near the remains of an ancient city from the Han Dynasty between 202 and 220 AD. The local research institute reported that never before have so many of these kinds of coffins been found in the same county. Inside the tombs, archaeologists found a lot of cool stuff. Coins, pottery, old tiles that were part of the funerary practice, but the craziest things they found were the urns. During the Han Dynasty, children were not cremated. Instead, children were placed inside of large urns and then stored inside a tomb. The urns were basically big jars, but they would be layered with multiple urns so that the child had a protective layer around its body. The child's remains would be placed at the center, and the urns would overlap like a nesting doll. People in the Han Dynasty practiced a lot of ancient customs. They were still offering grave goods at burial services, which they had been doing since 5000 BC. It was a tradition that continued until the Ming Dynasty ended in 1644. Long after Europeans gave up burying people with treasure, the Chinese kept the tradition going. Cremation also started very late. People in Inner Mongolia didn't like the idea of burning the dead, so burial was the only real option. But why were so many babies buried in layers of urns? Professor Lam Wenqiang from the Chinese University of Hong Kong said it all has to do with money. Rich people could afford to bury their children in tombs, but only the rich. Bricks were expensive, meaning most people could not afford to build a tomb for their child or for themselves. Instead, families used urns, as it was culturally appropriate. This was thought to protect the body from the elements and from demons too. Number 3. The time capsule. In December 2014, workers at the Massachusetts State House in Boston were fixing a leak. The quick repair job turned into the discovery of a lifetime when they unearthed a time capsule that had been safely secured in one of the structure's cornerstones. The time capsule was created by none other than Samuel Adams, Paul Revere, and William Scolay. In 1795, Samuel Adams was the governor of Massachusetts. The three men placed the contents into the time capsule that year as part of a ceremony in downtown Boston. At the time, the State House was still under construction. The history of the State House is fascinating. It's situated on the top of Beacon Hill, which was once owned by the first elected governor, John Hancock. The State House was finally finished in 1798 to replace the older State House from 1713. The older building still stands and is currently used as a historical museum. But get this, the old State House had its own time capsule too. Officials found a container stuck inside the head of a golden lion statue in October 2014. The container had been in there for 113 years. It was filled with sealed letters and photographs. The other capsule placed by Samuel Adams had been removed earlier in 1855. Emergency repairs had to be done to the building. The time capsule was removed from its original cowhide container and put in a copper box. People forgot about it until the next repair job in 2014. The box was about the size of a cigar box. It was transported by state police to the Museum of Fine Arts. There it was x-rayed and opened with the utmost care. It contains copper and silver coins from the 17th century, a medal depicting George Washington, also a silver plaque, and a couple of newspapers. The shocking find was briefly displayed at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Then the time capsule was reburied with a few modern additions for future generations to find. Have you ever made a time capsule of your own? Let me know in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 2. Monju's treasure. An unimaginable hoard of artifacts was found inside the body of a Buddhist statuette. I say statuette because the figure is only 30 inches tall. It's not huge enough to be a big statue, and the tiny figurine is stuffed to the brim with artifacts. Officials identified 180 different relics hidden inside, and they think the mysterious objects were put there 700 years ago. The figurine is at the Hokeji Temple in Japan and has been there since anyone can remember. The temple used to be an important part of the ancient Japanese capital called Nara. Scientists were fairly certain that something interesting was hiding in the statue, so they used CT scans to take a closer look. They immediately noted scrolls and other items packed tightly together. There are about 30 items in the head and about 150 in the body. It's important to note that the artifacts have not been removed because nobody wants to damage the figurine. If the artifacts are taken out, it will make the statuette lose its value dramatically. It won't be as historically important anymore. Shigeki Iwata from the Nara National Museum said the discovery of the artifacts has increased the value of the statuette as a cultural asset. The statuette depicts Monju Bosatsu. In Buddhist legend, Monju is venerated as one of the great bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are what you call people who are on the path to becoming a Buddha. Monju in particular is thought of as the personification of wisdom. They are typically depicted with Buddhist literature clutched in one hand and a sword wielded in the other. The sword isn't for fighting, but for cutting through ignorance. To further bolster the idea of wisdom, Monju is frequently depicted sitting on the back of a lion. It's a metaphor for taming the human mind through wisdom. Number 1. The Saint in the Wall. At the Church of St. Mary, located in Folkestone, England, a body was found hidden behind a wall in 1885. It was a discovery prior to the real takeoff of modern archaeology. The body behind the wall was in atrocious condition. It wasn't anything except a pile of old bones hidden behind a sheet of wood. The experts at the time couldn't prove it, but everybody had a hunch the bones belonged to one of England's favorite legendary figures, Princess Ainsworth. death. It took over 100 years, but recent scientific analysis has finally confirmed the hunch. The bones did indeed belong to one of the first English saints. Ainsworth was the granddaughter of Ethelbert, the original Christian king of Kent. He was the man who ruled eastern England from 580 until 616 AD. She was likely born somewhere between 630 and 640, right at the time Christianity began to spread across England. Her father had a monastery built for her in Folkestone, and she joined it when she turned 16. It was the first monastery for women in England. Before Ainsworth died, she became the abbess. That means she took care of the monastery and the people in it. Expert Andrew Richardson from Canterbury Archaeological Trust says she died around 653. Because of her great accomplishments, even though she was only in her early 20s at her time of death, she was made a saint. Just becoming the founding abbess of an original monastic institution for women gave her the right to be acclaimed a saint by the church. She was among the very first female saints in England. When her body was found in 1885, workers had been removing plaster from the north wall of the church. They found a cavity and a pile of bones inside a corroded leaden casket. But the bones were in such terrible condition the vicar wouldn't allow anyone to touch them. Only now, with modern technology, were scientists given permission to inspect and handle the remains. And sure enough, the analysis proved that the bones are Ainsworth's. Thanks for watching! How many ancient sets of bones do you think are hiding in church walls across the world? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe and come back soon for more videos like these. See you next time. Bye!